Hi, I'm Jo, one half of jo+kapi. In my own practice, I generally use digital technologies and investigate the relationship between humans and their technology and how we use it in artistic settings.
Hi, I'm Kapi. I'm the other half of jo+kapi. And in my individual artistic practice as well, I work a lot with data forms and using those data to negotiate like new narratives that can come up from this information that we are amassing as a society. And together with jo+kapi, and we have a combined artistic practice of both curating exhibitions as well as creating installations and artworks that are centered around questioning the consumption and the creation of digital media in 21st century.
Hi, I'm Aditi Neti. I'm a creative technologist, and a lot of my work involves exploring the intersection of nature, culture, machines, and humans. I do a lot of creative coding as well, and I love to explore the aesthetics or push the boundaries of how crazy code can make a visual look.
Hi, I'm Xuan, and I am an installation-based artist, and I would say that my art practice works around material entanglements in the cybernetic systems. So similar to a lot of artists working in the art and technology field, questioning like how we actually shape our lives through all these different technologies and where we're headed towards.
Hi, I'm Tish, and I'm a human that likes working with objects to talk about how we live in our daily lives and also to bring attention to the things that we don't usually notice around us.
The show Sorry for the Technical Difficulties in that way then is like a culmination of all of these different types of processes put together and laid bare for the audience to really partake in the processes that these artists go through when they're working with technology to produce their works.
So when we put on shows and then when we also work on art at shows, there's always gonna be technical difficulties. Like if you're working with technology, you're bound to run into something that stops you in your path and you're just like, oh, I have to fix this, I have to fix that. Originally, me and Kapi were like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to create an exhibition that is kind of like everything is a work in progress, everything is in process, nothing is like the fully polished final installation of electrical devices. We want to expose the inner working of these technologies.
Something that's also that usually goes like unnoticed is the extreme process that is required before a final artwork is fulfilled, especially in the scope of like technology-driven art. There is a lot of like tweaking and like just dealing with issues that come up when you're trying to get technology to do what it's not necessarily supposed to do. In the process of us conversing about like putting a show like this together, I think we landed on a point where everything is in a state of flux, and like these sorts of works are usually never truly final. Like you're always going in and tweaking stuff and trying to make sure that you're working within the limitations of what technology wants to do versus what you want it to do. So in the process, we also started looking for artists that we both know and we love their works, as well as like new artists who we happen to encounter through our practice. And we wanted to showcase the processes that they go through, right? And like the troubles that they face and how they negotiate their relationship between what the technology is expecting them to do with it versus like what they would like to achieve through the process.
My work displayed at Sorry for the Technical Difficulties is called Translation and Negotiation. It's part of a larger series where I'm investigating what it means to take a very handcrafted, historically steeped practice like drawing columns and sort of integrating them into some creative technology, some digital medium even, and seeing how we can retain the human element that goes into this entire process. With translation negotiation, I attempt to get my Axie draw to interpret an algorithm and then attempt to draw a column right back onto an iPad. And there is also a sensor there that includes this human parameters or influences from the environment of the exhibition. So if anybody's standing there or if anybody's talking, all of that influences how the Axie draw draws the column. So it sort of the axis draw and the column itself emerges as a site of negotiation. The machine is just trying to draw a column. The human is influencing how it's drawn, and then therefore there's no control per se, neither can achieve a very curated, perfect outcome. And I think, that's something I was trying to explore.
So for my work, it's entitled Persistence, and it is a work in progress that involves 4 iPhones. It started out with me being interested in the idea of the screen burn and how that is a glitch of the pixels in the screens that we see in our everyday lives. And then it slowly morphed into failing to burn the screen intentionally, into physically embedding and sort of deconstructing the layers of what goes on behind our screens to sort of look into the materiality of the screen. And then finally, within the phones themselves, I had them deconstructed to sort of question the objecthood or the way that we encounter this very familiarly known device known as our phone.
The title of my work is called Void Loop, and so it takes inspiration from programming code where you run a set of codes again and again in the endless loop. And so in my work, I use ready-made objects that you can find around you, devices such as robot vacuum or even your Google Home and your Siri on your iPhone to create, to put these objects in situations where they are stuck in a constant loop and cycle in the situations that they are placed in. And so the work is really a commentary about the way that we live our lives and how different are we as compared to these like non-living beings, repeating the cycle or going through our daily lives.
So JJ's work composite of different screens, and in one screen it shows his final artwork, which is his usual output, a digital painting. And then on another screen it shows a time lapse of his process, which is very unique. He sculpts 3D objects, transforms them within an environment, and then uses that image as the digital final artwork, as a digital painting. We thought his process was quite interesting because not only does he sculpt something that is 2D, like behind this image is actually a whole process of 3D objects that you can actually navigate around in different dimensions. His technique in using 3D softwares was pretty interesting too. He would imprint other 3D objects into the sculpture that he's making. Taking that process and creating something 2D was pretty interesting to us. It also represents a process that I think a lot of people go through, like when you're working with 3-dimensional objects and then you're working with found skeletons and things like retopology, yes. Right? Things like retopology that could glitch your models or make it look like the eyeballs are popping out of the face, stuff like that. So that is what's shown on the last screen, the smaller screen, where there's like all of these mishaps that you have to overcome with the software to create the final outcome. And then not only that, during the artist panel, we were also talking about hardware and how these sculptings and renderings are very hardware intensive. So processing power is also really important for something like this, rendering digital painting.
With Samson's work, I thought it was really interesting because Samson was very much interested in one of the foundational principles of generative design, which is noise. And noise is basically just a mathematical function that is pseudo-autonomous and that runs itself in any computer, and it generates like a randomized value string of like between like 1 and 0. What's really interesting is that you can use noise to propagate any type of like generative design. What Samson wanted to do was to bring the audience along for the journey in really playing around with noise, understanding different algorithms and looking at what are the different types of aesthetic outcomes that can come from manipulating the different parameters of the noise. What was really nice for us was also that the control surface that Samson created for interacting with his work was purposefully unlabeled, which meant that the audience doesn't really understand what the knobs, dials dials and switches really do, and all they have to do is to just interact with it and then understand like what sort of implications those switches and dials and knobs imply onto the noise. So in many ways this captures the very like playful as well as experimental spirit of working with computational algorithms, especially those that seem to have a mind of their own, because there are certain like hidden processes that happen in addition to what it is that you are coding as a programmer, and then what the computer is trying to do interpreting the code behind the scenes.
Darius Ou's practice is very much embedded in the lineage of printing as a technology. His interpretation of 3D printing is that because it takes on the name of printing, which actually it's not, it's technically additive manufacturing where you add things, it's not actually printing things. He's using traditional printing techniques to then transpose them onto the 3D printing technology. And so he 3D printed a book, and also he designed his own typography that is suited for the 3D printer.
So in the process of him negotiating with his slight like discomfort at the term 3D printing and how it's co-opted a long history of lithographic printing and the forms of printing that we are familiar with, I think Darius kind of like straddles both the technical difficulties of, you know, making the 3D printer do something it was never technologically designed to do. But then also there's this like other stubborn and like petty gripe that comes from the choice of the word 3D printing that Darius explores and looks at, like how, you know, in many ways actually books are volumetric, books are surfaces that have depth to them, and how can he use the 3D printing process to kind of like make this a little bit more obvious to people and bring that to an audience in a brand new way.
With his 3D printed book, his idea was to physicalize the page. A page in a book might be seemingly flat, but actually it has many, many surfaces. So he wants to expand that into like a more three-dimension surface. Our collaborative work in the entrance, it's an installation of screens, wires, and also printed banner that spans from the ceiling to the floor. With this mix of technology and the way that it's installed and sculpted, we're using it to prep the visitors for the experience of the exhibition. It's really important that the visitors come in and they don't feel intimidated by the technology within the room, because oftentimes you'd see an installation and then it'd be like, I don't know, it's like magic, right?
Yeah, usually like technology-based exhibitions can sometimes look like quite unrefined or maybe like difficult for the audience to understand, because it requires quite a bit of like prerequisite knowledge in terms of like how the work was made, or perhaps even like the processes that were undertaken to make it. So the entrance space helps the users frame and understand that like you're about to enter a space where yes, technology is present, but then it's also like not something that is meant to be extremely difficult for you to understand or inapproachable. Something that helps to make it a little bit more easy to understand and a playful nod is the little screens also show user submitted content of technical difficulties that were captured out in the wild, like, you know, random blue screens of death on like public billboards, or things that were supposed to do something but they're not really quite behaving. So I think this little like humorous nods to the issues that we face in our everyday lives also tends to help the viewer kind of like take on a more casual frame of mind, and so when they do enter the space, they are, I think, better equipped to interact with the works in a more like curious spirit and really just like have an open mind and understand that, you know, these things are not necessarily works that are using technology the way they were intended to, and sometimes they might fail or sometimes they might encounter difficulties as the exhibition is ongoing, but then it's all part of the spirit. Yeah.
When we're talking together, or even at our artist panel, we talk about how technology is getting, or the knowledge of making technology and digital technology is getting further and further away from us. Things are getting smaller and smaller. It's harder to understand the tools that we have today, like AI. That's like everyone's using it, but who actually understands what's going on? It's very complex. And yeah, things are getting more and more complex. So this show also, we want to ground like the electronic devices that we have today and kind of live in the in-between of like the fully refined and complex and kind of hidden to the really exposed and analog devices. Like we want to live sort of in between those two. Can I just say one funny story? The first time I met Si Xuan was when she was fixing one of her works at Yo workshop. because
Also hearing Gilman.
yeah, which is also here in Gilman Barracks. So actually, part of like my inspiration for doing the show is you, because I was like, actually, whenever we have exhibitions and something is gone wrong,
Yeah.
we actually do. If there's someone in the space, they actually come and watch us like fix it.
Yeah.
So it becomes a little bit of a performance.
Yeah.
They're curious at what we're doing. But we're also trying to make things work for the other artists. Part of the forming of this exhibition for me was also inspired by Si Xuan, watching Si Xuan fixing her work.
I think it's become like something that's a little bit of a running joke also, because like then Joe and I, when we like stage our own exhibitions or when we do our own works also, we are like constantly putting on these like micro performances when things do go wrong, and then we're like in front of different installations with a keyboard trying to fix things desperately, while like a small group of audience is slowly emerging, watching us, trying to figure out what it is that we're doing. Which actually happened on our opening night, because like one of the touch screens that we had on Samson's work was like the screen's visual was rotated 180 degrees, but then the touch layer was still how it was configured out the factory. So like on the touch surface, like up was down and left was right, and like for the longest time, like we didn't realize it was actually happening, and users were trying to interact with the screen, but then they were like always weirded out by why touching on the top right initiated things happening on the bottom left. So I think like these are some things that just happen, you know, in the midst of like installing these types of works, and then you're just like having to deal with them constantly.
Yeah.
One of the things that started me on this particular work in progress is having a phone that an iPhone 5 that actually had a spoiled screen for a long time, and I couldn't access the information that was in it, and I actually wanted to retrieve all the images and see it as a sort of time capsule. Me being curious and wanting to save a little bit of money, I wanted to decide to repair my phone screen myself and also take a look like what's inside the phone. Actually, Joe mentioned this in like one of our conversations, was that actually the iPhone feels like this really sealed up and clean brick, but actually there's so much that's going on inside, so many technological advancements that actually led to the phone being so compact and clean. We don't know what's going on inside. For example, like we often see our cameras or what's on our camera on our screen, so our screen is opposite from our camera, so it's almost like we're seeing through the device. But when I flip up the screen, like audience and visitors would actually get so confused and try to understand, oh, where's the camera, where's the buttons, where like the interface is all jumbled up, and I think that's quite amusing to sort of experience and observe. I would also like to add to like what you said about seeing me like repair my works in like shows and exhibitions, and since then actually I've never stopped repairing all my works, and I always have to factor in time. It's almost like a friend or a child that I need to like sort of just make sure that, you know, everything's okay. And yeah, it's a lot of these actually maintenance labors that and a lot of hands that are actually involved in making sure that this system like works as is expected to.
Like even yesterday, I think one of your phones decided to just lock itself, and then and then we couldn't like unlock it, and like the touchscreen was unresponsive. And then like so she had to come in to fix it again. So happens.
I have two things to say, but the first is I love the spirit of this exhibition where technical difficulties aren't seen as something to be ashamed about or something like, oh man, you know. So it happened to me, I think this morning, or actually yesterday when jo+kapi were here, where the homing of my axi drawer was slightly misaligned, and then my axi drawer started beating my iPad up, you know, slightly, which was quite funny, you know. It's kind of ironic. And yeah, I think just the general setup of the exhibition, there was this spirit that we would embrace every technical difficulty that came across, and that was a very different and nice spirit. And also for me, the concept of the axi drawing on the iPad also was sort of born out of something unintentional. Usually axi draws are used to translate something like a digital file, let's say an SVG or an ongoing code, and you would draw it into an analog medium, so maybe like a pen and paper. So I had a lot of paper at home, and I think I was doing something else at the time, and I got so lazy constantly replacing the paper, as you know, my Axidor would draw it again and again. So I was like, you know what, I have an iPad and I have a pencil, you know, why not just use that as a testing base, and then when I'm ready, we can draw it out on the paper. I was having a discussion with jo+kapi about this, and then, you know, we really realized the irony of, you know, having an Axidor draw back onto a screen. And yeah, so I think even, I guess in this case, it emerged out of laziness, I would say. But yeah, I think unintentional outcomes from, you know, yeah.
Laziness or efficiency?
Who knows?
I was very interested in like the futility of objects. So initially I was like interested in this idea of if I put a dustpan at an angle and the broom just kept sweeping upwards but the dust kept dropping down, and this idea of the broom not being able to fulfill what it was intended to do. I thought that was quite funny. And then when I was developing this project, it was also during COVID. So I was like, okay, let me go dig around my house to find what I have, and then around the home, whatever objects that I have that I can kind of utilize to convey this idea of this futility. And so that's how these objects kind of got selected. And I think like what Si Xuan mentioned also, so a lot of understanding like how these devices, I guess, kind of function. So playing around with like the sensors of the objects or even like their functions, and then turning them on themselves. Initially I was trying to trap the robot vacuum within like a confined space, and then the bumpers just kept hitting and then it just kept getting stuck. And then I just tried like, oh, what if I remove the bumpers, and like it was on the table and then it just like jerked back. Then I was like, okay, cool, let's do that. Yeah, and then I found a lazy Susan at home because I'm like a hoarder, right? So I just like decided to match like things together, and then that's how it kind of worked out. Yeah. Plenty of issues that came up, I think, also during the show itself. So sometimes devices can get very naughty, right? They don't cooperate with you. So I think like at the first few days, like the robot vacuum was like trying to escape from its confinement and trying to run away. So we got a remote control to kind of like stop it and like to readjust it. And Google and Siri, I think I last heard from jo+kapi that Google is now telling Siri that reminders are now tasks, and so like stop asking me to remind you of things, like just tell me the tasks. So I would say that we haven't really figured out how to work around it yet. So yeah, I think it's just part of the process of these like technical difficulties that we face during the show.
That leads back to how do you keep your artwork going when it's very dependent on the softwares that they have right now? Like what happens if they update the software and then you can't access it anymore? It's like how they try to conserve Nam June Paik's work, but then they had to get really specific people who knew how to fix these equipments.
And like now, like sometimes we show Nam June Paik's works on like modern television screens because like they just can't find CRT. So I think then the spirit of like putting on an exhibition like this and the works that are presented are also in many ways a little bit of like a time capsule, or it's like a slice of the zeitgeist, because it represents the technology that was made available at the time, and the works are not only just responding and using the technology, but they're also like working within the confines of what the technology allows the artist to do at that point. And if at any time like the software updates or like things change, then the whole dynamic of the artwork and how it was constructed also changes. And and then these constantly bring up more technical difficulties that need to be like approached and solved again and again and again.
In the spirit of technical difficulties, there were many. So I mean, I haven't worked with something as complex as a phone before. Usually I would work with things like massages and motors. So these are things that don't have digital systems or circuits embedded in them. So in sort of trying to work with a phone, I think a lot of the components and hardware was a lot smaller, and it was hard to identify what looked like what. A very funny but interesting karma that I got from actually trying to burn iPhone screens is that my phone got burned by accident because I was playing Sudoku for it for so long. The work itself is fine, but I guess my phone is sometimes okay. Like it's getting better. I think with regards to the show and the work, there was this one time I was actually trying to press down sort of a snap closure within the phone itself, and I used a metallic screw a bit, and it actually started, the phone started like glitching out of control. So I think there's a new work within that as well. And it started playing music because it was from my old phone. And then I couldn't get control of my phone, which I needed to sort of, prepare the display. I think in a lot of the technical difficulties, we actually end up learning something from it. So I think that was what's exciting about working with all these technologies.
At one point, I was really struggling with sort of balancing the element of control and human involvement in my project. I think at one point, I had a very autonomous version where it would just be, two machines talking to each other, and then another version where, the whole thing was instigated by a human. Working with technology, it's also an interesting question about control and, what level you give up that control or to what level you try to control it. How I overcame this was actually an hour-long group therapy session with jo+kapi, and I think it really just helped to sort of have these really interesting conversations about, that balance and, what that interaction or experience could be like. And that's kind of the form that it is today. Even when working or sort of conceptualizing these kind of installations, you really think about control with tech, and I think that's something that's important and interesting.
To piggyback off of what Aditi said, one of the challenges curatorially that Jo and I faced was also that because a lot of these works are like constantly in flux, right? Because you're dealing with technologies that are being forced to operate in ways they were not intended to. Jo and I were constantly having conversations with all of the artists. Every couple of weeks, like the idea would like shift wildly, and then like it would shift back, and then we were also like dynamically trying to deal with like, okay, so if the work wants to go in this direction because of the technical difficulties or the technological constraints that are being placed upon the artist, then like how do we also reflect that in the curation as well as like the larger story that we're trying to tell. And eventually I think we were very glad that all of our artists came through for us. But it was also like something that was quite a fun process for the two of us to also like have an almost like out of body experience where we are usually the ones making the works and going through all of these like struggles and processes and being like down in the nitty-gritty and trying to solve these issues. And it's quite different for us to take the role of like curators and observe these things happening to the artists that we're working with, and then coming in to be like, okay, how do we like help them, and how do we also like keep the whole show going and ensure that like everything is moving smoothly. Yeah.
I think also another challenge was to invite primarily designers as well. So trying to help frame their work in the exhibition. That was also a challenge, and I think we worked really closely with those artists to see how they could present their work, right, for the eyes of a viewer. I don't really see myself as a curator. We're just like friends, putting shows for friends, but curating a whole show actually is a really good practice to viewing how to contextualize works with each other, how to draw themes that you didn't necessarily see before. So it's a really nice exercise to look at your work in a different way as well, or even more deeply.
Yeah, I think it's something that I'll definitely highly encourage like other artists to at some point like attempt like curating, because I think it really helps to contextualize your practice and really flips the script on like how you see your own work in context with other works and other artists practicing around you as well. Yep.
We hope that when visitors come to the exhibition at Art Outreach, that they experience technology in a different way. So the perception that they have of artworks that contain digital technology, that there are many other variations with artists looking at these devices in very different ways.
To put it very simply, I think what we hope audiences take away from this exhibition here at Art Outreach is that oftentimes when working in technology, the glitches and the mishaps and the misbehaving technology is just as like important as the intentional coding and all of those things that the artists partake.
The open call process was very easy, and also setting up the whole team was great. I think this was a really smooth installation, and everything came together without any mishaps at all. What I've learned is that help is good. Like if you ask people for help is good, because So we usually do everything ourselves, but having a team to help us and also hiring an installer, I think helps to preserve the space as best as we can. Yeah.
I think something that was really nice also, so I think Joe and I haven't had the opportunity to like put up on an exhibition in such a big gallery space before, and something as more like traditional white cube environments hasn't really been something that we had the benefit, the pleasure of working with. That opportunity also gave us a lot of insights as to how we would put together an exhibition like this in a space as big and like spacious as we have here at Art Outreach, and also like thinking about how to have the artworks occupy the space without it becoming like too sparse. I think curatorially it really like engaged us quite like a lot, and we learned a lot about like spatial planning and like just how artworks relate to each other, how people move through the space and how they take in the artworks and all those things. I think that was definitely, I would say, a first for us, because prior to this we had worked with very small spaces and smaller number of artworks.
Currently, I'm actually in residence at NTU CCA, which is actually across the road very conveniently. And so I'll be part of something as part of Singapore Art Week. I will also be part of the Art Outreach Summit, which is also part of this space.
I have something coming up for Singapore Art Week next year, which is like tonight. I'll be working with the National Gallery's Rotunda Library, and I'll be doing a projection onto the other side of the Rotunda for the period of the festival.
As jo+kapi, we're currently residents at SMU. It's a research residency, and in March we're going to have an exhibition at SMU, and it will be primarily surrounding our own art project, Enzyme.
Okay, thanks guys.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much.